welcome Hilde Hardeman, Director General EU Publications Office. Hilde, please introduce yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Hilde Hardeman. I'm an official of the European Commission. I lead the Publications Office of the European Union. Now, what do we do? Our role is to make it known to the public what the EU does and means, and to help unlock the power of data. And at the core, the very core of our mandate is to publish the laws of the European Union to give them legal effect. As we all know, citizens have to be able to know what are the rules and the laws that affect them. And so we publish the legislation and thereby turn them into legally binding rules that apply to all of us.
Thank you for that introduction. But we're here today to talk about conversational AI and chatbots. And I just heard your talk at the summit. And there's a legal framework coming up for AI. And I think it's very good. It's like GDPR. The EU takes a front or a lead role in bringing out standards how to deal with this, because we need something in place. Could you, in a very short way, introduce us to the what's coming in terms of legislation, and how companies can prepare themselves to how to deal with this, because it is exciting what's happening.
Yes, indeed, it is exciting, but also very, very necessary, because the European Union is a community of law, a community of values, very important values like human dignity, freedom, the rule of law, democracy, respect for human rights, including the rights of minorities. And so the European Union really wants that everybody in the EU can make the most of all the opportunities that AI offers, while at the same time making sure that we can address the challenges and the risks related to AI in a way that is in line with these European values. That is why the European Commission has made a proposal for what we call the AI Act, a piece of legislation that would set the framework for the use of AI in the European Union. You spoke about the General Data Protection Regulation that has become the worldwide standard. That's a similar effort to make sure that the use of our data is in line with those values that determine what the EU is. And in this AI Act, the EU wants to make sure that the use of AI responds to three basic criteria. That is, that it has to be lawful, in line with all existing laws and regulations, that it has to be ethical, that is in line with ethical standards, and third, that it is robust, that is, it has to be fit for purpose from a technical and societal point of view. And then, of course, the Union wants to put down a number of characteristics to which ethical, human-centric AI should correspond, so that those who develop AI, put AI in the market, use AI, know how they can translate these big ideals into real life. And that's why, before putting forward this proposal for legislation, the European Commission has put together a group of 50 independent experts to try and design such principles. And while I think we do not have the time to go through all of them in big detail, I would nonetheless want to enumerate them. So this is about AI being subject at all times to human agency and oversight. It's about technical robustness and safety of software, that is, chatbots or AI need to be designed with security in mind. And if something is corrupted, it must always be possible for humans to take over. Then trustworthy AI, human-centric AI, must ensure privacy and good data governance. So in turn also respect the general data protection regulation. trustworthy AI, fourth, requires transparency. So it must be possible for the users to see and understand what are the data sets and the processes that are used. These must be documented, traceable, explainable, interpretable. And if we have an element that may occur in the use of AI where you cannot fully explain the process, where you get the so-called black box effect, this as well needs to be documented and transparent.
If you say documented, the black box, because this, I think for a lot of companies, this is where the pain point will be. And that's where AI can be scary, because it is a black box and sometimes we don't know or we don't understand how it gets to the answer. What should they do if they have a black box? Will they be allowed to have a black box?
Well, we seek to address this for our own chatbot that we use in the publications office. We have a simple chatbot that we are developing. We seek to address this through what we call an explainability notice, in which we explain our rationale for using AI, in which we document input data and its quality. We explain the processes that we use, and we also provide guidance on how you can interpret the outcomes of the systems used, so that you know exactly what you can use this for and what it will bring you. Then there's 7 principles in total, so I will continue. 5th principle, trustworthy AI must ensure diversity, non-discrimination and fairness. 6th, it must be looking into societal and environmental well-being. That is that when we use AI, that use needs to take into account interactions with users, but also ecological and societal footprint. And then finally, and that's very, very important, trustworthy AI must go accompanied with very clear lines for accountability and liability, as well as with mechanisms for redress. So those are key principles that independent experts put together. They form the basis for the legislation that has been put forward. The legislation makes a distinction between high risk and low risk applications and everything that is between that. And of course, provides different approaches depending on the risks involved. And you were asking how can companies already today prepare themselves, because the legislation is not yet adopted. It's for the moment being discussed between our co-legislators, the European Parliament and the Council. I would refer actually to the checklist that accompanies the report of the independent experts. There is a very practical checklist with very, very practical questions that people developing and deploying AI can ask themselves, and that will really help them to work in such a way that what they do is human-centric. The Commission also asks constant feedback on this checklist, because technology evolves. We want to make sure that what we put forward is fit for purpose. And so there, in my view, there are 2 levels. There's on the one hand the level of the actual legislation that needs to be sufficient. I'm not sure that I should use the word generic, but I would like to make the comparison maybe with the Code Napoleon that we still use in many European countries to everybody's satisfaction, because it sets out very big lines. And then more the details of implementation that need to be possible to evolve, which is also why this legislation will be accompanied by governance that will be able to ensure exactly that.
Yeah, because the accountability part you mentioned, I think that is extremely important when a company starts building or designing their chatbot. It should be accountable and compliant by design. And if these design standards are integrated in the way of working, in the way of teaching people how to design chatbots with AI, then actually the whole legislation shouldn't be a problem. Because if it's already, it shouldn't incur any extra cost because you already did the work before. And what you said is that the EU or the EU government is leading by example, because you're saying you're building a chatbot that does exactly that and adheres to these standards.
Well, it's clear that we need to lead by example. We cannot be the ones putting forward legislation and then not apply it. So we are trying to make sure that those systems that we use, that those comply with those standards, that they are transparent, that it's clear what happens if they create a problem, and so on and so forth. And once again, in my role as practitioner, because in the European Commission I am working on developing, for instance, a chatbot, I am a practitioner. I have found this checklist of the report of the independent experts extremely useful, extremely practical, and I think it's a very, very good basis for companies and organizations that are working in that sector.
What we will do when we post this, we will put a link to where the checklist is, so people or companies who want to work with it or experts, they can download it and use it. And looking forward, in the near future, do you see companies that are developing AI applications or large language models? Do you see them coming into you or into the EU government and talk with you about the legislation, like in the past, big companies like Facebook and Microsoft and Alphabet, they try to lobby and get things done. Do you think that will happen, or is the EU just like with the GDPR, which is a good law, by the way, say no, this is what we're going to do. This is to protect our citizens, and we feel that this should be the standard for actually the rest of the world to apply everywhere?
Well, I think there are a number of elements to that. Of course, you have to listen to the stakeholders. Of course, you cannot regulate from on a different planet, from an ivory tower or a different planet, or whichever way you want to call it. So yes, you need to listen to everybody that may have a stake, and definitely big tech companies are part of that. They are important players. But then you owe it, and I come back to the values on which the European Union is founded. You owe it to your citizens, you owe it to everybody who would be using those systems, that you stand with the most important concepts that drive the organization in question. So yes, listen to stakeholders, of course, reflect carefully, stick to the very important principles, and also try to reflect very, very well about what this is going to mean in real life, and make sure that there is flexibility, evolvability built in the governance of the legislation. That is, I think, what we need to do and how it will be done.
And basically, so that you said Code Napoleon, that means the basic law should stay the same for a long time, and that underlying or next to it, there will be rules that can develop as technology develops. That's what you're saying. And if you personally, if I may ask, is there a chatbot you use and you really like?
Oh.
We're not testing anything today, but I'm just curious if you, in your personal life, use a chatbot without naming the company, but the type of application.
Not really.
No, not really?
Not really,
so,
not really.
That's actually quite funny. So how you're developing as a practitioner for the EU a chatbot. So are you guys developing it from the perspective of how you would use it? Or are you also involving random citizens to test it and asking their feedback?
To come back on your question whether I use chatbots, yes, of course I use chatbots if I need services from companies that have chatbots in place. If I have a problem with my railway ticket that I try to buy online, I will get the chatbot of the railway company. Or if I have a problem with charging my car because the charging point is down, I will get the chatbot. But to say that I really like them, I think that's probably a step too far for me at this moment. How do we develop that? Yes, we try to bring in a wide group of users. We start by ourselves. The people who work at our office are actually, even though we are all working for the European Union, quite diverse in their outlook. We have in our office engineers, lawyers, printers, graphic designers, proofreaders, and so on and so forth. So it's very good to have everybody take a look into that. But then, yes, we learn. So we have deployed our chatbot on the portal where we make available our legislation and our information about the contact details of EU officials, which we make available for transparency, as well as for the wider information, policy information that we make available. So we developed this chatbot by using, on the one hand, the feedback from the people who already use them. So if we see that the chatbot cannot immediately reply to a question, we try to update. But we also look at the questions that we get, not through our chatbot, but through our traditional channels of our help desk of our portals. We look at all the questions that come in the help desk that can come from anybody who is looking for anything. And then we try to make sure that our chatbot can also reply to the questions that come through the help desk, insofar that is possible, of course. Some are too specific, but that's how we go step by step.
And that's basically the way to do it. That's how commercial companies are doing it as well. So I'd like to compliment you with that. Even though you're not a heavy user of a chatbot yourself, I'd like to compliment you and your team that you're doing it and that you're leading by example, because I think with new legislation coming in place, this is really, really important. Walk the talk. So my compliments for that. And I wish you really good luck with implementing this law. We're looking forward to it. Thank you for talking to us. And we'll follow you and your accomplishments with the chatbot. Thank you very much, Hilde.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed our talk.
Very good. Thank you.